Good afternoon or good morning to you, depending on where in Australia you're tuning in from. My name's Rebecca Edwards, and I'm the co-chair of Elder Abuse Action Australia's board. I wish to acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters, and culture. I pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and note that the land was never ceded. Today, I'm joining you on beautiful but fire damaged land of the Dja Dja Wurrung people in Harcourt in central Victoria. Welcome to today's Lunch and Learn session. These sessions give our members the opportunity to showcase their work and share their knowledge and experience with a growing audience of people from the sector and the community. Some small housekeeping matters before we begin. The session is being recorded and will be shared with everyone who is registered, as well as being published on the EAAA website and YouTube channel. Please use the chat function to ask questions during the session. And as always, please keep interactions respectful to both our speakers and fellow participants. As we have multiple speakers in today's session, please add the name of the presenter to your question if you have something that you would specifically like them to address. And at the conclusion of all of the presentations, your questions will be presented to our speakers during the Q&A. Closed captions have been enabled for this session. If you need these, this is an option at the bottom of your screen in Zoom. And lastly, we'd really appreciate your feedback in a survey that will be sent to you at the end of the webinar. Now, to today's presentation. I'm really delighted to introduce today's panel, which features speakers from Relationships Australia National and Queensland offices. This webinar, Building Connected Communities Where Older Adults Thrive, will explore how loneliness among older adults isn't just about feeling alone. It's a serious risk factor for elder abuse and poor health outcomes as we age. But here's the good news, we can do something about it. Join the Relationships Australia team as they explore how loneliness affects our older community members and, most importantly, what works to prevent it. From neighbourhood-level initiatives like Neighbours Every campaign to targeted one-on-one support programs, they'll share practical, evidence-based approaches that bring real results. After all, building connected communities isn't just nice to have, it's essential for everyone, for ensuring that everyone is safe, valued, and thriving. So our speakers today are Nick Tebbey, who's the National Executive Officer at Relationships Australia. After working for over a decade in private legal practice, Nick has worked for a decade now in the community sector, including for the last 7 years with Relationships Australia. In his role as National Executive Officer at Relationships Australia, Nick is proud to be heading up a passionate national office team and representing the Federation in a range of policy, advocacy and research opportunities. Our second speaker will be Sam Robinson, who's the National Neighbours Every campaign manager. Sam has led the Neighbours Every campaign since 2014, bringing together people, resources and organisations to build stronger, more connected communities where everyone belongs. Sam has held senior leadership roles in the not-for-profit sector across Australia and South Africa, with expertise in experiential leadership training, conservation volunteering and community development. And last but not least is Ben O'Rourke, Senior Relationships Coordinator at Relationships Australia Queensland. Ben has worked in the community services for more than 17 years and is dedicated to promoting the rights, safety and wellbeing of vulnerable people. As the Senior Relationship Services Coordinator at Relationships Australia Queensland, Ben oversees a suite of programs designed to support seniors, strengthen connections and ensure individuals feel safe, respected and valued. So please join me in welcoming our first speaker, Nick Tebbey.
As Rebecca said, today's presentation is about building connected communities where older adults thrive. And before I begin, I'd just like to acknowledge that I'm coming to you today from the lands of the Ngunnawal people. I pay my respects to elders past and present, and I thank Rebecca for providing an acknowledgement of country as well. It's important to us that we acknowledge that for our First Nations people, community, connection, relationships were an integral part of their culture, still are an integral part of their culture, and have been for over 60,000 years. And I'd just like to acknowledge the generosity and ongoing resilience of our First Nations people in sharing their learnings with us today and ongoing, and to acknowledge that it always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Today, as Rebecca has said, joining with my colleagues from Relationships Australia, we will be sharing with you some different levels of information regarding the interaction between loneliness, social connection, and elder abuse. And this is a topic that is obviously very close to our hearts at Relationships Australia, because in everything we do, we see the power of relationships. We see the importance of having respectful, supportive relationships in our lives. But in the area of loneliness, we also see just how critical social connection can be as part of our well-being toolkit. And so Relationships Australia has been very proud to be the home of Neighbours Every Day for over a decade now, and we're looking forward to sharing some of the information from our campaign with you. But we also, and we're delighted to have Ben with us, because we also want to show how loneliness interventions can happen at the individual and group level as well as across the neighbourhood. Before throwing to Sam and Ben, I'm going to share with you a little bit of our research and data in relation to loneliness across Australia, to show you, I suppose, why it is that this is not just a well-being issue, but a safety issue, and the link between loneliness and elder abuse. It was interesting in the pre-registration questionnaire that people completed when registering for today to see that a lot of you already understand that link between loneliness, between social isolation, and elder abuse. So we'll unpack that a little bit further. And then most importantly, as Rebecca has said, is to really talk about what works, what we can do about that. And that's what we look forward to sharing with you. So first of all, just a little bit for those who don't know us about who Relationships Australia is. We're a federation of not-for-profit charities across the country that deliver services supporting, as I said earlier, respectful relationships. We support more than 150,000 people in Australia every year through counselling, family dispute resolution, elder abuse prevention, and many other services right across the life course, working with children and new families all the way through to later stages in life. We're also proud to be a founding member of Ending Loneliness Together, a national coalition of researchers, businesses, and community organisations dedicated to understanding and addressing loneliness in Australia. The main research that I'll be drawing on for my part of the presentation today is our Relationship Indicators study, which is a study that we're very proud of, that we run out of the Relationships Australia National Office to understand the state of relationships in Australia, if you like. It's a national survey of relationships that has over 3,000 respondents each time we run it. So we ran it in 2022 and then again in 2024. And it is conducted by the Social Research Centre on behalf of Relationships Australia using their Life in Australia panel. Those who have heard of Life in Australia may know it's one of the most methodologically rigorous national panels in the country. So it means that we're able to get a nationally representative sample of the Australian population through gender, through age, and geography. And that means we can treat the findings of relationship indicators as genuinely representative. Also, we're excited because we've now run it over 2 years and hopefully will be again soon. It's a longitudinal study. That means we're able to track the same people and changes in their practices and their experiences over time. As I've mentioned, it looks at the state of relationships in Australia. So some of the areas that it explores include relationship satisfaction, loneliness, love and safety, grief and loss, well-being, and people's support, accessing support and support-seeking behaviours. Um, sorry, I'll move on. In relation to today's presentation, some of the measures that we've specifically looked at that are really relevant both to the discussion of elder abuse and loneliness include measures looking at quality of people's relationships. This includes whether they feel safe disagreeing with their significant relationships, levels of fear and distress in their relationships, and how they manage issues within their most challenging relationships. We also look, as I said, at people's experiences of loneliness and sense of belonging, their interaction with groups and different relationships outside of their immediate family. And we also look at a range of known risk and protective factors, including gender, age, health and mental health and disability, as well as other factors that are known within the realm of risk factors around elder abuse and loneliness. So I suppose before I go any further into sharing some of the findings from relationship indicators, I really want to talk just to bring home why it is that we think loneliness is a very important part of the conversation when we're talking about elder abuse. And as I said in the pre-registration survey, many of you touched on this already, but I think it's worth just pointing out again why this is important. And it's because loneliness is not just a feeling of discomfort. All right. It can start as a feeling of discomfort. Usually it's quite a subjective feeling that someone feels that they're not getting the support they need or the benefits they expect from their relationships. But it's very important to know that loneliness is very different from the question of isolation. So someone can be quite isolated, but not feel lonely. And conversely, someone can be surrounded by other people and feel very lonely. And for this reason, loneliness is actually something that we need to treat as quite a significant public health risk. Not because it's terrible that people feel lonely, because everyone feels lonely at different points in their life, but because we need to understand when loneliness persists, when it becomes chronic, what are the impacts of that loneliness? And the research now is quite unambiguous. Right, we've seen research over the last decade or so that shows us that has physical health impacts comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It increases the risks of heart disease and early death, and it's strongly associated with depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideation. Research shows us that lonely people are significantly more likely to visit their GP, and that persists even after taking into account issues around physical health. So we know that it has quite significant impact on people's subjective well-being and their sense of life satisfaction. But for the purposes of today's presentation, I just want to spend a moment drawing the next connection, which is the connection between loneliness and the risk of experiencing elder abuse, because that's a relationship that is not always well understood. When the Australian Institute of Family Studies did its groundbreaking research into the prevalence of elder abuse in Australia, it identified social isolation and loneliness as one of the risk factors. So there is an understanding out there that there is a link between social isolation and elder abuse. In fact, social isolation today is one of the most consistently identified risk factors for elder abuse. When an older person is isolated, when their only meaningful relationship is perhaps with the person who is doing them harm, then they face an impossible choice between safety and connection. However, loneliness goes beyond, as I said before, just the experience of isolation. Loneliness also includes that feeling of seeking or needing extra connection. And people who are lonely are more vulnerable to abusive relationships, but also they are more likely to go undetected if they are experiencing abusive relationships. Now, our relationship indicators data puts some numbers on this, and I will be talking more about the RI data, as we call it, later on. But what we see is in Australia is that 8.3% of older persons reported feeling unsafe, disagreeing with their most important person, and that 17% experienced distress in their relationships over the last 6 months. So these are significant numbers of people who are experiencing challenges in their relationships. Now, when you combine that with the fact that over half of those people choose to manage relationships entirely on their own without seeking any outside help, we know that loneliness and social isolation combined with that can create a fertile ground for elder abuse, not only to commence, but to persist. So just to have a look a little bit more in depth. We know that 21.8% of Australians were aged 65 years or over at the time of our 2024 data. Now, within our relationship indicators survey itself, approximately 654 respondents of that 3,000 that I mentioned earlier were in that age group, of whom 250 were female. So that means that the number of respondents pretty much mirrored the statistics around people in that age group. 66.8% of those people chose their partner as their most important relationship. However, quite a significant number chose their daughter. And these are the sorts of relationship pressures that people in that age group experience. Cost of living pressures, the pressures around experiencing different values or beliefs to their significant others, and the pressure of having unfulfilled expectations. As I mentioned earlier, a vast majority of those people choose to manage their relationship issues on their own. So loneliness in Australia, these are the numbers reflected through our relationship indicators data that tell us that 24% of Australians reported feeling lonely. This is a very significant number, 1 in 4 essentially, which was up from about 20% in our 2022 survey. And that the number of people experiencing social loneliness is even higher at around 37%. It's a slightly lower number for older Australians, for older adults, where only 1 in 5 said they felt lonely. It's interesting that this is a piece of research that's borne out across a number of different studies that says that loneliness actually peaks for younger people, not older people, even though there is a bit of a stereotype around older people being the ones who are more likely to feel lonely. What we do know about older adults and their experience of loneliness, 18.6% said they felt lonely. 11.5% felt emotionally lonely, that is lacking in emotional connection, whereas 31% felt socially lonely. As you can see there, these numbers are lower than some of the other age groups. And so the age group experiencing the highest level of loneliness is those aged 25 to 34, but also pretty much across the life course, all other age groups experience higher levels of loneliness. This is a good thing. This is a reason to, for some optimism. But we do know that for those older adults who do experience loneliness, the impacts can be severe and they are less likely to seek help. Older adults who are most at risk of experiencing loneliness include those living alone, those with long-term health conditions, those experiencing relationship distress, or, as I mentioned earlier, those who are socially isolated. Just a little last bit of data. I promise not to inundate everyone with too many graphs and pieces of data, but a comparison here on the left-hand side, which looks at in the orange bar, the reports in 2022 versus the purple bar, which is the reports in 2024. As you can see, people's experience of safety or feeling unsafe actually went down in 2024, which is a positive sign. However, their experiences of loneliness has gone up. And experiences of life satisfaction have slightly reduced. So, really, across that 2 year period, there hasn't been a significant shift in reports by people in the 65 plus age bracket. Um, the other side of this slide just shows a comparison between the population of people in Australia aged between 18 and 64 versus the population in Australia of people aged over 65. And so the light pink colour is the younger age group, and the darker purple is the older age group. So, as we've said, older people less likely to feel lonely, and more likely to be satisfied with life. So there are, as I said, some positive signs there. However, what we need to bear in mind, as I've already said, is that the combination of risk factors and the prevalence of loneliness for older people is something that means we need to address this from an elder abuse perspective. So, what did the relationship indicators data tell us about positive side of things? What's good? What works? We see that people who are participating in and feel like they belong in groups have a significant protective factor against loneliness. And that includes things like volunteering, hobby groups, neighbourhood groups, community groups, all those sorts of things. And as you can see there, among our older demographic, people were very likely to identify that family groups play an important role in their lives, and also a significant portion saying that community groups play an important role in their lives. So all in all, some positive signs within the data, as well as I think that warning sign that we need to pay very close attention to the ongoing risks of loneliness. So what does all this mean? What are we doing with this at Relationships Australia? We are clear that addressing loneliness requires action at multiple levels. Right? There is no single silver bullet. There is no one size fits all model that will actually enable us to end or reduce the experiences of loneliness or ameliorate the consequences of loneliness. It's personal to each individual who experiences it, and it varies enormously. It's shaped by the communities, the systems that people live within. We know there are a lot of external factors that contribute to higher levels of loneliness. And so we've identified that there really are three different levels of support that are needed if we are to actually succeed in breaking down the experiences of loneliness. Over a number of years, Relationships Australia has worked with the Australian National University on research with this, and I'd like to credit Associate Professor Tegan Cruis, who has come up with this model of really three levels across sort of national and community-wide campaigns, of which obviously our Neighbours Every campaign is an example. And I'll be very glad to hand over to Sam shortly to talk more about that. But then also group work and individual support. And we've seen that these aren't either or. They're complementary. The most effective responses for us as a country will see us working on all three levels to address loneliness. Before I hand over to our other presenters today, I just really want to touch briefly on the support services provided by Relationships Australia in our core work. As I mentioned earlier, for over 75 years, we've been delivering counselling and relationship support services through a number of funded programs at the federal and state levels. And we see that both individual counselling and other case management and support services are really important to helping people address the underlying relationship dynamics that might entrench isolation. But I think we'll hear a little bit more about some of the more specific services when our other speakers join us. And what I would like to say on this point is that individual support can only reach so far. So to talk more about how we can address loneliness across the other levels, I'm very glad now to introduce our National Neighbours Everyday campaign manager, Sam Robinson, who will share our experience with a national level campaign to prevent loneliness. And then we'll introduce straight from Sam to Ben, who will share some of the specific examples of on the ground work that's being done at Relationships Australia Queensland. So without any further ado, Sam, over to you.
Thanks, Nick. Thank you. I'm coming to you today from Biripi country in regional New South Wales. I want to acknowledge the traditional custodians on the lands in which we're all meeting. For First Nations people, community and belonging are part or at the heart of culture and connection to country. So I pay my respects to elders past and present. So you've just heard about the very real link between loneliness, isolation and vulnerability among older people in Australia. What I want to share with you is what we're doing about it, and more importantly, what you can do.
We all want to live in communities where we feel connected to others and accepted for who we are. After all, it feels good to belong. Sadly, 1 in 4 Australians say they often feel lonely. But when we enjoy positive, respectful relationships with those around us, we feel more resilient and we're more likely to feel a greater sense of belonging. For tips and resources on how to create, share and grow belonging in your community, visit neighbourseveryday.org.
Thanks, Nick. So Nick has shared the stats about loneliness in Australia and particularly with older people. They're not just numbers, they are indeed risk factors. When people are isolated, they're less visible, less connected, and of course more vulnerable. Belonging, on the other hand, is a protective factor for mental health, for well-being, and for safety. So the question becomes, what actually builds genuine, lasting connection across whole communities? There we go. Thanks, Nick. So before we show you a quick video, I'm just going to give you a little bit of history. A woman named Mrs. Elsie Brown sadly died at home alone in 2001. Her body wasn't discovered until 2 years later in 2003, and this sparked a social connection movement now in its third decade, growing from checking in on elderly and vulnerable neighbours to everyday acts of connection and community and belonging year round. So this year, Neighbour Day falls on Sunday the 29th of March, and you and your networks are invited to be a part of it. So let me just show you a short video which gives you a little bit of a summary of what Neighbours Every Day, or NED, is.
What makes a community strong? It starts with you, with all of us, creating connections every day. In today's busy world, it's easy to feel disconnected. Research shows that loneliness affects many Australians, but there's something we can all do about it. Welcome to Neighbours Every Day, or NED, Relationships Australia's social connection campaign that's been bringing communities together for over 20 years. But who is a neighbour? It's not just the people next door. Neighbours are anyone in our community who we can connect with, share with, and grow alongside. When we connect with our communities, amazing things happen. Our well-being improves, loneliness decreases, and we build more resilient neighbourhoods that can support each other through tough times. It's as easy as create belonging through simple connections, share belonging by including others, and grow belonging by building lasting, respectful relationships. Join us for Neighbour Day on the last Sunday in March, our annual celebration of community. But remember, creating belonging happens every day of the year. Visit neighbourseveryday.org to find free resources and discover how you can create, share, and grow belonging in your community.
Thanks. So there's evidence about this community connection. It's not anecdotal. The ANU researchers Nick spoke about has conducted research over 4 years that involvement in Neighbours Every Day leads to tangible and sustained reduction in loneliness. This finding has been recognised by the World Health Organisation, also National Suicide Prevention Strategy, and also state and territory governments in their loneliness and social isolation reports. And it's not just good for communities in the abstract, it's good for individuals and the organisations that participate as well. So getting involved does have benefits. It raises awareness, it builds sustainable connections, improves mental health and well-being, creates a kind of resilient community that protects people most at risk. These aren't abstract outcomes. They happen one real connection at a time. The most powerful evidence I can share with you is not actually a statistics, but a story. So this is my neighbour Betty. Some years ago, I think it was 2019, I experienced something that changed the way I think about community and what's possible when neighbours simply pay attention to each other. A new neighbour, she'd been next door a few months, called out over the fence, and she knew I was a Neighbour Day type person and said, "Hey, did you hear that the neighbour over the back has had a fall and she's in hospital?" Now, I only really knew Betty through the fence. We had an occasional hello. She lived alone. Her partner had died a few years beforehand. She was a bit prickly, to be honest, and she was a quiet person and kept to herself, so we respected that. But because I'm lucky enough to live in a country town, I was able to go to my local postmaster and explain what happened and find out her surname, and also find out that her name wasn't actually Betty, and rang the base hospital in town, found out what had happened, that she'd broken her hip, that she'd been transferred to another hospital. So I went to introduce myself. I bought her a bunch of flowers and a card. And understandably, she was quite reserved because she didn't know me. I started dropping into the hospital every few days and calling her just to let her know that someone was thinking of her, because she had told me she had no real friends or family in town, nor in New South Wales. So I mentioned that to a couple of our neighbours, and before long, they started visiting too. When Betty came home, a few of us, well, actually most of us, kept checking in on her to make sure she was okay. I would take my senior dog, Blokey, who she loved and who loved her a lot. One neighbour started casual Neighbour Day lunches every few weeks, followed by Scrabble games, because she knew about me and knew about the concept. And Betty came along, as did all the other neighbours. People offered Betty lifts, they helped with errands, we took pets to the vet, small practical things. We celebrated her birthdays and Christmas, and simply being neighbours. What surprised me was this: none of us neighbours were especially close, nor were we alike at all, but Betty became our common connection. Betty gave us a shared purpose. Through caring for her, we came to care about each other. We became a community, not because we were similar, but because we had something to care about together. Betty certainly benefited from that connection, and so did we. We had more social connection, sort of a sense of purpose, more reasons to leave the house and to check on each other, as well as Betty. The belonging flowed both ways. So Betty lived until nearly 90, and in her final weeks, we, the neighbours, connected in her backyard. There are a dozen or more of us, kids, dogs, of all ages, with her niece who came up from Victoria. We shared our Betty stories and scattered her ashes in her beloved garden. Excuse me, sorry. So Betty's story is one that could easily apply to a growing number of people across the country who might be isolated and feeling lonely. And that's what NED does. It gives people permission. It gives them a pathway to take that first step towards connection. And as we see every day in our work at Relationships Australia, those connections matter really deeply. Relationships build resilience, they support mental health, and they genuinely change lives. So we don't do this on our own. Neighbours Every Day works because of organisations and individuals who champion it. We have a national network of very neighbourly organisations, more than 80, and the number is growing. Community groups and all levels of government who carry this message into their communities. Your organisation is really welcome to be part of this movement too. I just thought I'd show you this because we mail out every year. We write to each CEO and mayor of every council in Australia to remind them of the important role they play, as they are the front line, I think, in many ways in social connection. So how to get involved? Getting involved doesn't actually mean having to organise a big event. It starts with noticing someone. It starts with checking in. It starts with welcoming difference every day. This belonging every day bingo card is a fun way to try a few small things, and it's quite popular, and I think Ben might talk about that a bit later. I think the thing is that small things are most often, the big things. So on Neighbour Day 29 March, of course you can host a gathering, big or small. We encourage people to share what they're doing on social media. There's enough bad news on social media. I think right now we could all use some good news, and normalising friendly, inclusive, welcoming behaviour. I think it's a really important thing for all of us to do. So we have many, many resources. We invite you to choose your own adventure. Maybe pick one or two or three that work for you, for everyone, for every day and Neighbour Day, and also for councils and community organisations. And I'm just going to show you a few ones quickly now, but we have lots. We have social media assets. These are lovely messages. I've noticed people sharing them over the last month or two. Again, pushing positive messages out there and letting people know that there is an organisation or there is a campaign that they can join in on and create, share and grow belonging every day. We have connection cards, tick box on the back. They're also co-brandable, but you can get ones that are just not co-brandable. Welcome in 20 languages is the one there that is really very popular and obviously very inclusive. We have colouring in pages. We've got about a dozen, but these three are quite popular. I think the Queensland Police a number of years ago actually used to take these into schools. We have posters, conversation cards to help people get started. We have conversations that connect, practical ways to handle tricky neighbourhood issues with confidence and care. There's everything that you might want to find. And then we have, if you're looking for inspiration, 56 great ideas for connecting with your neighbours. These are only some, but these are super popular, from very small things to big things. One of the things that I love about this campaign is that it doesn't ask a lot. Low effort, high impact. A smile, a message, a knock on the door. It's the consistent small acts of care that build belonging, not the grand gestures. Small things are actually the really big things. So that's the invitation. You can visit Neighbours every day, grab some resources, take one step and create, share and grow belonging. And I thought I'd share a message from one of our NED ambassadors, Costa Georgiadis, who's been with us for more than 10 years and is an awesome supporter.
You share belonging by putting yourself out there and understanding that when you share, it's more than the sum of the parts. When you share, there's actually a recognised high that comes from that, let alone what it means to someone to receive. So it's a two-way street. And when we understand that it's you get back more than what you give, then sharing is a real investment in everyone.
So the people you and we support don't just need services, they need to belong. And belonging is something communities build together, one connection at a time. So thank you so much for having me. I'd now like to hand over to Ben O'Rourke, who is the Senior Relationships Coordinator at Relationships Australia, Queensland. Thanks.
Thank you, Sam, and thank you for sharing that beautiful story. Um, I am the Senior Relationship Coordinator at Relationships Australia. So we call them a suite of services. The one I want to highlight today is our Senior Social Connection program and how important it is to have those services that really help people make those connections in the community. Next slide, please. So I want to start with a case study around Mary. So Mary was an older lady that contacted our services and she was seeking some legal support. We did a pre-intake with Mary and found out that she actually had been seeking this support for quite some many times. And after a bit of a bit more in-depth conversation with Mary, finding out that she was really quite lonely. And we were able to connect her to our Senior Social Connection program. This program does have case management. It's got community support where we can also connect people into groups, and it has information, advice, and referral. So the case manager was able to go out to Mary's home and meet her there, and was able to find out that unfortunately Mary did have many health concerns. She had become increasingly housebound and was very shut in. So the blinds were closed. Things were just getting a bit on top of her these days. We also found out that Mary really liked plants, and she does often buy them. So when she gets out, she goes to Coles and would buy them and get them, but just leave them on the front veranda. And I think if you know those plants from Coles, if you don't repot them and you don't, water them, unfortunately, they do die. They do need some care. So after some time, it didn't just happen, but obviously being able to support Mary to connect with the services she needed to get back and connect with some health services and follow up on those things. But also, we really wanted to focus on getting Mary, I guess, connected again, weaving those threads of connection back to the community. So we did use the neighbourhood card, as Sam pointed out, which is great. You can use it in a lot of different ways. For us, we were able just to write a short description, what Mary was looking for. Didn't put her address on, just a short description, and we put the case manager's phone number. So, we were able to use that as a mechanism to be able to find someone who might be interested to come and help Mary pot plants, maybe once a month. Weren't sure what we were looking for, but we had to throw it out there. We had to, as Costa said, be courageous and make that connection. So what we found over time, Mary also was able to connect with some groups as well, so which we'll see next. But also Mary did find that connection where someone was willing to come over and to help her with the gardening. And slowly, bit over time, she connected with services, aged care services, just slowly, bit by bit. I guess Mary was able to open the blinds again and be more connected. Next slide. So just highlighting, I spoke about that we run social groups. So we do run chat and connect groups. So these are welcoming, non-judgmental spaces where people can just come and socialize. So one of the big parts of that is these are often people that haven't socialized, need help to be able to make those connections again. So these groups are that starting point often before people can go out and join a knitting group or join something that they enjoy again. And conversation cards are something that we use in these groups. We have them laminated, we have them on the side. Sometimes we use them as a starting point to start that conversation each time we have that group. So I encourage people to go look at the resources. They're amazing. They can be used in so many ways, such as the next slide is the bingo card, which, I love this one. Look, you look at it and you think, there are so many things here. How can everyone possibly do all those things to tick off a bingo card? But it's really about getting people to think around other ways they can actually make those connections. So, we might, for the month of March, we'll introduce Neighbourhood Day, what it's about, introduce the bingo card, give it out to everyone and say, hey, during this month, we're going to see how many connections you can make throughout that month. So each group, we check in, we see how people are going, and then at the end, you have a social barbecue. So you know what? Plan a local barbecue, tick. That's one of those things that we were able to tick off at that end. Just probably want to highlight how we use Neighbourhood every day. We think it's an amazing campaign. I encourage people to go out and have a look at the resources, but also check on your council's websites. I know, just a shout out to Gladstone, they're doing a neighbourhood day up there, and same as Mackay as well. If you look on their website, you will find that they actually have shout out to a neighbour. So someone can actually nominate someone who's done amazing work in the community. So locally, we have connections with them. So just want to hand back over to Nick and say thank you for having me here today to be able to share our senior social connection.
Thanks so much, Ben. Really appreciate that. And I think it's great to see that story of Mary, and certainly Sam, your story as well with Betty, those examples of, you know, the two-way street of connection and belonging. And I think Costa captured that so beautifully in his video as well. So I suppose just now to bring it all together and to a close, and hopefully you've all found some interesting insights today. You know, what we want to leave you with really is the understanding that loneliness is not inevitable in older age. In fact, as we saw at the beginning, most older Australians are not feeling lonely or very lonely or socially lonely, and experience some of the lower rates compared to other age groups. But we know that for those who do experience loneliness, the consequences can be severe and the barriers to getting help are often very high. The link to elder abuse is real and important, and loneliness and isolation create vulnerability. We know that lonely older adults may be more willing to tolerate harmful relationships because they have no other connections. They're often managing entirely on their own or in silence, or otherwise going unseen in their experiences. So for this reason, we need multiple interventions at different levels. And this works with the individual, as in Mary's case, with groups, as Ben has spoken to, but also national campaigns. And the most effective response for us as a country will be to look at doing all three. Really, the positive message here is that connection is protective. Our data is clear. Older people with strong social support, group participation, and safe relationships support significantly better outcomes across pretty much every measure that we look at in our relationship indicators data. And I think that's a sign for great optimism and positivity for us all. So on that note, we're happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Nick and Sam and Ben. That was a fantastic presentation and a timely reminder that loneliness can be a significant risk factor for elder abuse. But I think more importantly for all of us, that there are some ways that you can prevent it. And thank you, Sam, for being so authentic with the case study that you shared with us. I do have a couple of questions from you from the audience that are already coming in the chat. So if you're ready, they're not necessarily for any specific person. So perhaps you can just decide between you. The first one's from Kathy. Have you considered discussing intersectionality, the rainbow, gender diverse communities, the CALD communities, internet deprived and economically disabled folk in your programs?
I mean, yes, absolutely. So they are, you know, Relationships Australia is an organisation that works for and with everyone. And we've seen through some of our research that the socioeconomic or other factors of a person doesn't dampen the impact of participating in Neighbour Day or Neighbours Every Day. So this campaign works for everyone, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But Sam, I wonder if you want to just mention some of our amazing ambassadors who are helping us.
We have some awesome ambassadors, and for example, Ruby Susan Mountford, they, them. They are an LGBTQIA and disability advocate. We have Karen Nagrani, who is a blind and disability advocate, as well as an LGBTQIA advocate as well. I'm just trying to think of who else. I guess, we have so many different ambassadors that we are for everyone. The top line item is belonging, and they are just able to access communities. We have people who have different disability as well, but generally speaking, they're just great high functioning people who live their life. And with the whole idea of you've got to see it to be it, we have a range of ambassadors, so hopefully people can see themselves. We have Hugh McKay. I'm just thinking he's probably 88 now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's just such a wonderful supporter. So anyway, I'm babbling with that, but just
and I think
great people.
What's important about all these people is they've actually they contribute then to not just the why, but also how we approach this. So, for example, Sam shared the welcoming card in 20 different languages earlier. You know, that has come directly from feedback from our ambassadors and others that, greater reach out into CALD communities was critical, and we have a partnership with a translation company that means a lot of our resources are being translated into community languages and circulated that way. So, I mean, within the realms of what's possible for our very small campaign, I mean, it's not a hugely resourced campaign. We are doing whatever we can to make sure it reaches out, and of course, across the broader Relationships Australia Federation, we've got services specifically for different community groups that we tap into as well. So the answer is yes, wherever possible.
Yep. Great.
Do more.
Thank you for that. Lisa comments that she works for a Meals on Wheels organisation, and she says that they've got community restaurants, which are great for social connection. However, we also have around 250 clients who receive meals at their home from a volunteer once a week. A lot of these clients are quite socially isolated. I would love to make them feel part of our organisation's community, but not sure how this could be done. Do you have any suggestions on how to create belonging and connection with a community that's separated like that? And she mentioned ideas like pen pals. They do chat to them on the phone throughout the week, but is there more they could do as an organisation?
I was just going to say, one of the things that's come up at our very neighbourly organisation meetings, particularly since Letters of Hope has unfortunately now been unsupported, so it doesn't exist anymore, is letter writing. People writing letters, and not necessarily even to specific people, but writing letters. That's something that we're sort of having a little look at the moment, because it does make a big difference. I don't know, Nick, if you had any comments on that.
Well, I think there's a lot of tips probably in that 56 ideas document that Sam shared earlier. So one point just to really drive home is that all of the Neighbours Everyday resources are free and on the website. So people should work through, them. And as Sam said, I love it, choose your own adventure, pick the thing that works for you. We see that, particularly, and I think, Meals on Wheels, what an amazing work you do as an organisation. But it's hard when all these people are not together. So looking for ways that you can connect people. I know, Ben, one of your services is actually to help people get connected on social media and using technology. So, whether there are options there to look at connecting people via technology, but letter writing, all of the different things. I mean, there's a solution for everyone. It's just not the same solution for everyone.
One of the things I was going to say that the pandemic showed us was that, yes, so many people don't have access to technology, and that was the big encouragement through the campaign. Those who do connect with those who don't. And I think we had a fair bit of success with that. So I think that's the challenge as well, is those of us who know we have that privilege, we need to reach out. And as Nick said, there's so many things on the website that make it really easy, and permission to connect, because it's a recognised campaign.
Sharon asks if there are any protection or risk management strategies in place to avoid people taking advantage of vulnerable people using the neighbour cards.
Look, it's a really important question, and we know that is, the downside of connection, if you like, is that there people are vulnerable and can be taken advantage of. So we've got resources within our suite of resources that are informed by Relationships Australia practitioners across the country about setting boundaries, about taking care of yourself. We found that these have been really well received among communities, because it's lovely to have all the easy, simple stuff about how to connect. But if we don't think about how to protect ourselves as well, then, as you exactly point out, there are risks there. So we've got those resources, and we would encourage people that seek help if there are issues that need someone to intervene. Don't try and manage them all on your own.
And can I add to that? One of the things that we do encourage with people doing small events or small actions is don't necessarily invite people into your home. I know that might be hard for some older people, but often when you're getting to know people, cuppa by the curb, everybody brings a cup of tea and a packet of biscuits, and you stand out in the street like people did during the pandemic, and you have a chat and you go back inside. Or some people used to meet by their wheelie bins. But I think, slowly do we catch the monkey. And if you don't feel safe, don't invite people into your home.
Yeah. You've possibly already thought of this, but Victor wonders if you've been in touch with Rotary clubs about this program.
Shall I, Nick, or shall you?
Yeah.
So lots of Rotary clubs do get involved. Neighbourhood Watch clubs get involved, Lions, all sorts. We don't have a formal relationship with them. We do have one with Neighbourhood Watch Australasia. If Rotary would like to hit us up, I'd love to have a chat with them because they'd be perfect.
Great. I'm going to wind us up there. There are a couple of other people who've reached out and who would like to have interaction with Relationships Australia directly.
Fantastic.
So we'll pass on all of those details. But in conclusion, I really do want to thank all three of you, and to everyone who's joined us today. Conversation reminds us that preventing elder abuse is not just about services and systems, but also very much about community, staying connected, checking in on one another, just creating spaces where older people feel seen, heard, and valued are all part of the solution. A few people have asked about slides from the presentation. Yes, they will be shared in the next few days, along with the link to the recording. A little plug and a reminder that our next Lunch and Learn session will be on Thursday, the 9th of April, when we'll hear from Council on the Ageing New South Wales on the topic of ageism. We encourage you all, if you're not already members of Elder Abuse Action Australia, to join via the website eAAA.org.au. And also a reminder that EAAA is hosting the Australian Elder Abuse Conference Stand Up Speak Out on the 27th to 29th of July on the Gold Coast. It's more than a conference, it's a national call to action, and we encourage you to be part of conversations shaping the future responses to elder abuse. There is a conference program available on, again, the website conference.eAAA.org.au. And we'd really love to have many, many people join us and speak out with us in July. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today, and we look forward to connecting with you again in April.